Health officials and people trapped inside Gaza's largest hospital are rejecting Israel's claims that it is helping babies and others evacuate, saying fighting continues just outside the facility where incubators lay idle without electricity and critical supplies are running out. Today is Monday, November 13th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Health officials and people trapped inside Gaza's largest hospital are rejecting Israel's claims that it is helping babies and others evacuate, saying fighting continues just outside the facility, where incubators lay idle without electricity and critical supplies are running out. Israel says some people have been evacuated from Shifa Hospital, but the health ministry has denied claims of evacuees and safe corridors. People sheltering in the hospital say they're afraid to go outside. President Joe Biden's national security advisor says that, "We do not want to see a firefight in a hospital where innocent people, helpless people, people seeking medical care are caught in the crossfire." Israel's military and rescue services say attacks by Lebanon's Hezbollah group have wounded 7 Israeli troops and 10 other people. The clashes came as skirmishes between the Iran-backed group and Israeli military continue to intensify along the Lebanon-Israel border, threatening to escalate into another front in the Mideast's latest war. The Israeli military said in a statement that 7 IDF soldiers were lightly injured as a result of the mortar shell launches in the area of Manara in northern Israel earlier today. Israeli rescue services did not identify the location or provide information about the 10 others wounded by rocket blasts and shrapnel. More than 180,000 people across France, including 100,000 in Paris, have marched peacefully to protest against rising antisemitism in the wake of Israel's ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza. Prime Minister Elizabeth Bourne, representatives of several parties on the left, conservatives and centrists of President Emmanuel Macron's party, participated in the march amid an alarming increase in anti-Jewish acts in France since the start of the war. French authorities have registered over 1,000 anti-Jewish acts in the month since the Hamas October 7th surprise attack. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen also attended amid fierce criticism that her once-pariah National Rally Party has failed to shake off its anti-Semitic heritage, despite growing political legitimacy. The United States and China are the 2 global economic heavyweights. Combined, they produce more than 40% of the world's goods and services. So, when Washington and Beijing do economic battle, as they have for 5 years running, the rest of the world suffers too. And when they hold a rare high-level summit, as Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping will this week, it can have global consequences. The world's economy could surely benefit from a U.S.-China détente. Since 2020, it's suffered one crisis after another: the COVID-19 pandemic, soaring inflation, surging interest rates, violent conflicts. Hopes have risen that Washington and Beijing can at least cool some of their economic tensions at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Activists protesting environmental abuses, poor working conditions, and the Israel-Hamas war are protesting a global trade summit. They were marching Sunday in downtown San Francisco. That's where this week's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Conference is taking place. Thousands of protesters are expected. The No to APEC coalition is made up of more than 100 grassroots organizations. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are among world leaders expected at the summit. Protesters will not be allowed into tightly controlled security zones, open only to attendees. San Francisco's police chief says the city welcomes protesters, but will not tolerate violence or property destruction. Ukraine says Russian forces have ramped up attacks in eastern Ukraine in an attempt to gain ground near two key frontline cities. The head of Ukraine's ground forces says Russian troops have begun a push to regain territory near Bakhmut, the eastern mining city that was the site of the war's bloodiest battle before falling into Russian hands in May. Ukrainian troops had recaptured the heights over Bakhmut since Kiev launched its summer counteroffensive that has so far resulted in only incremental gains and heavy losses. A Ukrainian military spokesperson says the Russians have become more active near Bakhmut, putting pressure on Ukrainian troops south of the city. A wildfire burning in a remote Hawaii rainforest is underscoring a new reality for the normally lush island state, just a few months after a devastating blaze on a neighboring island leveled an entire town and killed at least 99 people. No one was injured, and no homes burned in the latest fire, which scorched mountain ridges on Oahu, but the flames wiped out irreplaceable forest land that's home to nearly 24 fragile species. Severe drought fueled by climate change is creating fire in Hawaii, where it's almost never been before. This blaze on Oahu's wet windward side is unusual. President Joe Biden has a lot of unfinished business from his first term that he intends to continue if he's re-elected next year. It's a far different vision for the country from what Republican frontrunner Donald Trump has outlined during his own campaign. Biden wants to expand child care, community college, and prescription drug benefits for Americans. The Democrat also is pushing to protect voting rights and restore nationwide access to abortion. If Biden wins in 2024, he probably will face some of the same political headwinds as he's had to deal with in his first term, including firm Republican opposition on Capitol Hill. Donald Trump is already laying a sweeping set of policy goals should he win a second term as president. Priorities on the Republicans' agenda include a mass deportation operation, a new Muslim ban, and tariffs on all imported goods. If his plans were to make it into place, they would represent a dramatic overhaul of government arguably more consequential than that of his first term on issues ranging from immigration and homelessness to education and crime. Some of his current ideas would probably end up in court or impeded by Congress. Trump's campaign and allied groups are assembling policy books with detailed plans. Georgia extended its streak of weeks being top-ranked in the AP Top 25 to 22, giving the Bulldogs the second longest run of being number one in the history of the college football poll. The Bulldogs received 54 first-place votes. Georgia broke a tie with Miami, which made 21 straight appearances, at number one from 2001 through 2002. The longest number one streak belongs to Southern California. The Trojans spent 33 straight polls at number one from 2003 through 2005. The entire top 8 of this week's Top 25 remained unchanged, with number 2. Michigan receiving 7 first-place votes, and number 3, Ohio State, getting 1. Louisville and Oregon State entered the top 10. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the world news for Monday, November 13th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.